You're always the people who I need to record for. Well, other people do check it. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, welcome everybody. We're at the third verse of the Eishes Chayil.
Oh boy.
We've done two already. We're not going to do the full one today. We'll do partial part of it, and then some. I don't know, next week or the week after. Oh, I think next week we'll do the second half, and then we'll talk about Hanukkah too. So,
Oh, is this
and the
a
Hanukkah.
especially long one?
Well, it talks about a lot of people.
Okay.
Okay. So the verse is Gmal Sahuta Valora Kol Yamei Chayeha. She treats him with goodness, never evil, all the days of her life. Um, so the Eishes Chayil, the woman of valor, repays him with goodness in return for his placing his trust in her. Because in the previous verse, we discussed how the husband places his trust in his Eishes Chayil and his woman of valor. And now she returns goodness. But goodness can also mean Torah. So she encourages her husband to study Torah, never evil. She distances him from any negative behavior. So she has a way of um, of guiding him in the right way, in the right path. Goodness also could mean Hashem. Hashem is right, good to all. Hashem is all good. Hi, Liat. Um, she ensures that her husband remains close to Hashem and far from evil. Um, and as I said, that it said velora and no evil. If he, no, not no K-N-O, W, but N-O. Okay. If he would do something upsetting, she's not just going to yell at him or tell him off. She'll use her wisdom to address it wisely and to oppose to what he's doing, but in a very careful way. All the days of her life. So in good times and bad times, she always treats him well. Even after his passing, she honors him in his death. So this verse actually alludes to a few women. Today, we're going to talk about two of them, and that is Rebecca, and Zipporah. So Rivka is the wife of Yitzhak, Isaac, and Zipporah is the wife of Moses. Okay, so we'll start with Rivka. So Rivka was born in Mesopotamia. I think that is current day Iraq. Um, her home and her city was full of idol worshippers. And it says that Rivka was a rose among thorns. Now, the only reason a thorn exists is to protect the rose, is for the rose. Once, once the thorn will only get nourished because there's a rose on it. Otherwise, no one could care less to grow a thorn, right? We want to grow the rose. So because the rose has to be grown, so the thorns also get their nourishment. And once the rose is plucked, no one really cares to water the thorns anymore, right? Rivka was pious and righteous, and once it was time for her to be plucked from her place where everyone was worshiping idols, Hashem did not leave her for 1 minute longer than he had to, and he made sure to arrange that Eliezer, the servant of Avram, comes to pick her as a wife for Yitzchak. Now, many of you know the story. How did Eliezer know which girl would be the right girl to pick for Yitzchak? Because Avram said, promise me that you'll take a girl from my family, and and he knew that the girl had to have the right qualities. So before he entered the city, he made a pact with Hashem, and okay, before we get to that, okay, so yeah, so he made a pact with Hashem, and he says, the girl that gives me water and also gives my camels water, then I know that she's like super kind and super sensitive and super good, and she has the right character traits for Yitzchak. Now, she had to take Sarah's place. Sarah had just passed away recently, and it says that the sun rises, the sun sets, meaning that Rivka had to be born before Sarah passed away. So when Eliezer comes and he comes to the well and he sees Rivka, and Rivka comes over to him and he says, please, can I have a little water? And Rivka says, sure. And she gives him water. And she doesn't, and she waits for him to drink enough that he had something to drink, and she makes sure he has enough water near him that he could drink more. And then he says, "Oh," and she says, "Okay, I will also feed your camels water." And she goes, and feeding 10 camels is no easy feat for a young girl. And she goes and she feeds them all water. So this shows a lot of sensitivity on her part. So besides her being super kind, she's also um, didn't say, "Okay, I'm gonna give you water, I'll give your camels water right away," because then he'll say, "Oh, let me just drink a little bit, so the rest will be for the camels." She wants him to feel satisfied enough and feel like that he quenches thirst enough. Only then did she say, "Okay, I'll go get the water for the camels," to show that so he shouldn't feel like rushed or anything. And he should just be able to take care of himself. And once she saw that he was like taken care of, then she went on to feed the camels, because there is actually a mitzvah to feed your animals before yourself. But she had to make sure that he had at least something, and then she went to feed the camel. So it was like she had this like, right balance um, of knowing when and how to do things, especially when it came to kindness and sensitivity. Um, and right away, he realized this is the right girl. And he gave her the jewelry that he brought with him without even asking her, "Whose family are you from?" to just confirm that she was the right family, that, Avram's family, that they were supposed to take, so he's supposed to find a wife from. But he could see right away that she was special and she must be the right one. And of course, once he asked her, she answered in the affirmative. And another interesting thing is, so then he goes to the family, asks them for right to take her back. In those days, especially, the girl usually didn't have much say in who she was going to marry. But in this case, they asked her if she would agree to go with him, if she was interested in go. She for sure wanted to get married to Yitzchak. And then the family said, "Oh, let's wait a little. Don't take her right away. Let's, let her stay here. Let her get ready, and then she'll come. In a year or two." And the answer is no, she needs to come now. And they said, "Let's ask her what she wants to do." And they asked Rivka what she wanted to do. She also agreed to go right away. She knew that in her home was a home of idol worship. And as I said before, Hashem needed to pluck out the rose just in time, to keep that rose, Rivka, safe. So they get on the camels, they take the long, and of course she goes with her like maids and stuff. They come back, back over to where Abraham's home was, and she sees someone praying in the distance, and she said, "Who?" And she sees this like very dignified figure. She said, "Who is this?" And he said, "That's Yitzchak." And she immediately slips down from the camel and she covers her face with a veil, because she felt the Shekhinah, she felt the radiance of Hashem from Yitzchak, and she felt that it was so intense. Um, and when she came to Abraham's home, right away, the three miracles that were present during Sarah's lifetime returned. So number one is that the candles for Shabbos stayed lit the whole week. Number two, the challah, the bread that they made for Shabbos, the bread was blessed. And number three, there was a cloud of holiness around the tent. And these are the three mitzvahs of the woman. And we see that when Abraham, when Sarah was passed away, Abraham maybe did, maybe he made bread and maybe he lit the candles for Shabbos, but it didn't have that special blessing. It was only when Rivka, a woman, and she was actually a young woman, came, and when she came and did it, that's when the blessing remained. That's the power of the Jewish woman. When we do our mitzvahs, when we do things the way a woman does it, there is a special spiritual power that a man does not have. Then Yitzhak definitely knew that this is the right girl for him, and they got married. Now, Rivka and Yitzchak, so first of all, they have a little bit of a difficult time getting pregnant, conceiving, and then eventually she gets pregnant, and there's a lot of something going on in there, and she goes to the prophet of the time. It was Shem, I think, Shem and Eber, and she says, "What's going on? I have this baby's kicking whenever I pass a house of worship, and then whenever I pass, idol worship house, and whenever I pass the yeshiva, it's also kicking. What's wrong with it? Split personality, bipolar? What's going on here?" And they said, "Well, they actually have two babies, and they will be two nations and they'll be pit one against the other. One will be good, one will be not good. And of course, that's what happens. She gives birth, the famous story that we just read in this past week's Parsha, Yaakov and Esav. Now, um, Yitzchak, when we discussed this at the class on Wednesday night, that Yitzchak saw the spiritual potential of Esav, and that's why he was an Yitzchak was a kind of like more of a spiritual being, and he saw the spiritual side of Yitzchak, and that's why he felt Yitzchak should get the blessings. But Rivka saw it from a more practical sense, and she saw that really Yaakov needed the blessing. So Rivka saw actually was a higher spiritual source than Yitzchak. So she was more rooted in this world. Like, when you take like something and the higher you drop it from, the stronger it falls down, the lower it falls, like gravity. So when you have a soul from a higher place and it comes down into the world, it's much more grounded in the world. And that's why Rivka's soul was from a very high source. So she was grounded much more in the world. Also, women are much more, deal much more with the physical world, with the practical. And she also remembered the words of the prophet that said, you have two nations in your womb. And so she knew that the blessings had to come to Yaakov, and she did it in a deceitful way, right? Because Yitzchak tells us, that's last week's part. Yitzchak tells Esav, go get me some good food, and I'll bless you. And Yaakov, Rivka overhears, and she gets Yaakov dressed up and has him get the blessings. So why didn't she just go to her husband and say, hey, Yitzchak, we got to discuss this over here. I don't think this is a good idea for Esav to get the blessings. Why couldn't she discuss it with him? She didn't want to talk bad about her son. She didn't want to say anything bad. And so she just made sure that Yaakov would get the blessings. Now, when that happened, we know Esav got all upset. He wanted to kill Yaakov. And so Rivka, again, she doesn't tell Yitzchak straight out, hey, Esav wants to kill him. She says, oh, doesn't Yaakov need to go find a wife already? Shouldn't he go back to our family? Just like you had, Eliezer want to find me for you. So let's have Yaakov go find himself a wife from my family. And so she didn't say straight out, oh, Esav wants to go kill him, but more that he needs to find a wife. And Yitzchak, by listening to so first of all, he listened to his mother who instructed him what to do. He listened to his father Yitzchak, who said, go find a wife. And then for he himself, it's a mitzvah for a man to go search for a wife. So he did 3 mitzvahs by going to the home of Lavan to go and find a wife. And also by Esav, by Rivka dressing up Yaakov like Esav, it also was kind of like a message or like something for the future generations. Even if there's a Jew, a Yaakov, that is dressed, that acts like an Esav, that maybe not doesn't act like a Jew, they should still be included in the blessing that Yaakov got for the Jewish people. Okay, so now, second. Okay, so ultimately, Yaakov is the one who has 12 pure sons. They all remain Jewish. Rivka was a prophetess, and she also saw, she says that, she tells Yaakov should go there, and eventually she and Esav will come back together. Now, eventually means in the times of Mashiach, it says that the descendants of Esav will come to worship in the Beis Hamikdash, with the Jewish people. So one day, eventually, Esav, his children, will return too. So this third verse of Eishes Chayil, it alludes to Rivka because she treated her husband with goodness. She defied her family she left her family to marry him. She brought him comfort when his mother passed away. and she was a balm to his soul, but also she used her wisdom to make sure that her husband didn't go astray in blessing Esav, the wrong son. And she used her wisdom in a very delicate and sensitive way to make sure that all the right things fell into place. Um, okay, now we're going to discuss Tzipporah. Tzipporah is the wife of Moshe. So how did Moshe and Tzipporah meet? Um, Moshe is in Egypt. He um, he kills a Egyptian who had killed a Jewish man the day before, and Paro finds out, and Moshe miraculously escapes and runs to a place called Midian. He gets to Midian, and just like his ancestors before him, they all met their wives at the well. He goes to the well. I don't know what the well would be called today. But anyway, he goes to the well and he sees there's these female shepherds, and all the other shepherds are making fun of them, are giving them problems. And they have to wait for everyone else to leave so they can get water to water their sheep. Right away, he sees something's going on and something different about them. And but even more so, the girls, the oldest Sephora, they go home and said, "Father, Father." He said, "Oh, how do you get home so early today? Usually it takes you so long." He said, "Oh, well, there's a man there, and he was um, very helpful and he helped get our water for us." He said, "What?" And what they said, Yisro realized that this was a special person. He realized it was a Jewish man, and he said, "Why didn't you bring him home? Why didn't you just leave him by the well?" So they ran back to get him, and Yisro said, "Okay, you can marry my oldest daughter, Tzipporah, on condition that your first child you give up for idol worship." Um, and Moshe agreed because he first he realized how special Tzipporah was, and he figured Hashem will help him get him out of there. And eventually, when it came time, when their child was born, um, Tzipporah named the baby, and she kind of like took ownership, quote unquote. I mean, that was both their babies, both of their child. But so since she named him, it was like she took ownership, she took responsibility that that Moshe um didn't have to fulfill the promise that he gave to her father Yisro. Now, when it came time for the for Moshe, and Hashem told Moshe, "Go back to Egypt. The children are suffering. You need to go tell Pharaoh to let the Jewish people go." So Moshe, Zipporah had just had a baby, her second child, and they were traveling back to Egypt. And it was time, it was the eighth day, and it was time for this baby to have a circumcision, to have a bris. And because Moshe was on such a high spiritual level, he should have given them in the bris like you're supposed to on the right day. But he was thinking, hey, I'm traveling. If I give this baby a bris, I will delay our travel because we have to wait and make sure the baby's healthy and strong. We can't just travel while a baby just had a serious thing like this. And that will impede my instructions that Hashem gave me. So I'd rather let's just get to Egypt and then we'll give him the bris over there. But because he was such a high spiritual level, his life became in danger. It says that a snake came and started to swallow Moshe up. And Zipporah realized why is this happening? It's because because Moshe, the baby needs to have a bris, needs to have circumcision. So she quickly went and she circumcised the child, and the snake then slithered it away, and Moshe was saved. Now, what is this all about? What is this whole story all about? Um, so Moshe thought that this would impede his mission to save the Jewish people, but really the opposite was true. Fulfilling this mitzvah would give him the spiritual strength he needed to subdue Paro. So when we all imagine the picture, we see the pictures of Pharaoh with the big thing on his head, right? It's like a snake, right? Sometimes they have like that picture of that like snake coming out of his head, like that like fancy crown that's a snake. So Pharaoh, the snake represented as a metaphor for Paro. How could you? So how can you subdue a snake if you don't circumcise your son? If you can't circumcise your son, how are you going to subdue Paro? So when Jews do the circumcision, when we, by us Jews, making sure that all babies at their 8th day are circumcised, it is a protection for the Jewish people and a merit for the Jewish people that adversaries can't get them. So Tzipporah not only saved saved Moshe's life, it was also a prerequisite for the Exodus to happen. By her giving a circumcision to her son, that made it that they would be able to have strength over Paro and be able to leave Egypt. So Zipporah specifically was the one to do this. She began the spiritual process to subdue the unholy powers, to allow for Paro and Egypt, to allow, from a spiritual standpoint, that Paro and the Egyptians would be subdued and destroyed, and the Jews would be able to leave Egypt. Now, after the circumcision, it says, Zipporah says, Chatan damim lamus. It means the groom almost died, meaning my husband almost died because he didn't give the circumcision. Now, there's a few interesting things over here. So first of all, usually you say, like, and she said, but here it said, then she said. In Hebrew, the word then is uz. So first of all, Hebrew, the word uz is aleph and zayin, which is a numerical value of 8, like 8 days to have a bris. And number 2 is uz is same beginning of the famous song that Moshe sang after they crossed the sea, after they were saved from the Red Sea. Az Yashir, you heard of that? Az Yashir Moshe, then Moshe sung. So it was like an alludation. This bris gave the allowance that the Jewish people to leave and eventually cross the Red Sea. Another interesting thing about Zipporah, what is her name? Zipporah means bird. A bird soars above. Zipporah's character was very refined and soared above everybody else. She transcended the typical, woman, the typical characteristics. And that was a very good match for Moshe, because we all know Moshe was so holy and so pious and the greatest of all prophets. And as I say, some say he was almost more angel than man. So another interesting thing is a bird is an offering. We give a bird as an offering to free our home when the home has tsaras, like the leprosy that we read about in the Torah. One of the things they do is they would bring a bird as a sacrifice. And Zipporah freed her father's home of all idol worship. Another interesting thing is, how did she do the circumcision? She used a sharp tool, a sharp stone to do it. And the word for a sharp tool is with a tzaddik and a resh. And then the remaining letters of her name, the pei and the hey, equals 85, which is the same numerical value as the Hebrew word milah, which means circumcision. Another thing about Zipporah in in Aramaic, if we say the word Zipporah, it's spelled a little bit differently, Tzafra, and it means a beautiful morning light, like a radiant light. And this verse also alludes to Zipporah as she cared for Moshe. Even her 2 sons, their names, Eliezer, which means Hashem saved Moshe from Paro. Eliezer, Hashem helped me, Hashem saved me. And Gershom comes a word from the word Garesh, which means chased out. Moshe was chased out of Egypt, and he found Zipporah. So in both of her children's names, we see all this, how he ended up with Zipporah. And for today, we'll stop here for today. This verse also discusses the wife of Akiva, Rachel, and then we always talk about Sarah, how Sarah is connected to each of the verses of the Eishes Chayil. So that was a little short but cute little class about how these 2 women are connected to this idea. Gamal always does kindness and never evil all the days of her life. So hope we can learn something from it. Anyways, questions, comments,